They say when you're in a dark space and you feel like you've been buried, in actuality, you've been planted. Well, I must have been planted deep as shit, because I was in the darkest space I have ever been in, and I could not figure out how to get out of it. People advised me to get more sleep, drink more water, eat less gluten, exercise, meditate, be mindful, read self-help books. Oh my God, I did not have the energy for any of that shit. And to be honest, I no longer felt capable. Or at least that's the story that was in my head. And come to find out, I'm one hell of a storyteller. I think we all are. We tell stories from the past to justify the present. We tell stories about the future to somehow prepare ourselves for shit hitting the fan. We all what if. I what if about my money, about my job. I what if about my parenting and my spouse. I will honestly admit I have even what ifed about sex while I was having sex, and y'all know that shit's not sexy. Anywho, if you're a parent, a spouse, a lazy self-helper, an addict, or just plain nosy, this podcast is for you. I'm Amy, and I am all of those things. I spent 30 years listening to other people's stories and watching them dig through and find the truth and then climb out of this darkness. We all have similar stories. And now, I'm going to share the story in my head with you. So join me every Wednesday, the story in my head. You might laugh a little, you might cry a little. I suspect you'll be able to relate. But nonetheless, it will be shameless entertainment. The Story in My Head, Wednesdays, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you hear your podcasts. They say the truth will set us free, but not until we identify the lies that hold us hostage. I'm Amy, your host for The Story in My Head, a raw, meandering, unscripted sharing of my thoughts or those of my guests, where we identify the stories, the messages that we tell ourselves that create these lies that we believe, that trap us in darkness and depression, anxiety, fear, negative thinking, self-sabotage, addiction, etc. This is my experiment of trying to rewrite the stories in my head, and I ask you to join me. I'm on the couch, blinds are drawn, it's dark in the house, it's quiet, I'm in my pajamas, my hair is crazy, I haven't brushed my teeth in probably a day or two straight up. I have on my willy boogers, which are fuzzy socks, and they make me feel better. So since I was little, anytime I am sick, injured, or just don't feel well, I put on a pair of fuzzy socks, and that's just what I do. Anywho, I'm wearing my socks, my willy boogers, and I am just laying there in a dark space. I've been in the world of mental health, substance abuse, and developmental disabilities for a long time. And in my industry, the space I was in would be described as depressed and anxious. I described it as shitty and dark and scary and lonely. It was just dark. I had been at the park walking my dog and watched this squirrel ferociously bury a nut. And I could just relate to that nut. Not only was I feeling completely nuts, I just felt buried, planted deep. And after the walk, I brought back with me this vision of this nut being buried, and now I'm on the couch again, and I'm thinking about being buried, and I'm thinking I've got to climb out of this darkness, and I don't know how, and I am embarrassed that I'm in this place. I'm embarrassed that I've been here for so long. I'm embarrassed that I don't know how to get out of it. Honest to God, I just feel like a hypocrite, honestly. I'd spent 30 years listening to people share their stories and wade through the shit and find the patterns and identify truths and climb back out of this darkness. And I thought I was helping people. I was advising. I was guiding. I had facilitated this process. And now here I am on the couch in the fetal position, unable to get uncurled and up and moving and outside and out of this darkness. And I'm sitting on this couch thinking to myself, oh my God, all those people, all the classes I taught, all the sessions, oh my God, I told them things that now I can't even do. Oh my God, I have just fucked up all those people. I fucked up all those people. And I feel like a hypocrite, and I'm embarrassed, and I feel guilty. And I review it again, And I go through again all the advice that I gave and what I call my 2 cents or the little nuggets of wisdom that I would share. And here I am, unable to get myself out of this dark space. And people in the world would say things to me. I thought I would hear things. Let me correct this. I would hear things that I thought were basically people identifying or pointing out, magnifying that I am capable. I'm just not willing, to make the changes that I need to make. In my head, the story in my head had nothing to do with willingness. I wanted to be out of this dark space more than anything else. I was incapable because I had screwed all these people up. I had given horrible advice. I thought I was helping people. And in fact, I might have harmed them. And that was horrifying to me. And so I have all this guilt and, all this embarrassment. And now not only am I feeling incapable, I am feeling unworthy. I am unworthy. This is the darkness. This is the story. And I'm reviewing all kinds of times that I have failed at something, or I have not done my best, or my best wasn't good enough, or whatever, as evidence to support this story that I am incapable and unworthy. I am not good. That's the bottom line. That's the message of the story. I am not good. And I use the word good because that's how it was described to me growing up. Be good, be good. There's good people and there's bad people. So that was the goal, to be good. That's the goal. And I have failed miserably. And I'm in this dark space and I'm stuck. And I don't know why in the hell people think I'm capable or thought I was capable. I remember leaving a class or ending a session and people blessing me with compliments. Man, Amy, thanks so much for sharing that. Thanks, Amy, for that little nugget, as you say, that story that you just shared. It really resonated with me. And sometimes people would say, oh, girl, you should start a podcast. What? You have lost your mind. Okay. First of all, I've never even heard a podcast. I don't even really know what they are. I don't know how to find them. I'm not computer savvy. Did I mention I'm in a dark space? And I'm sitting here thinking about all the ways that I'm incapable, and then these intrusive thoughts of, Amy, you should start a podcast. Like, what? Where is this coming from? What in the hell would I even talk about? Really? What would I talk about on a podcast? I have no idea. And then I immediately go to, ooh, I could be on the Joe Rogan show. That'd be awesome. I don't know shit about podcasts, but Joe Rogan has one. Everybody knows that because everybody that listens to podcasts listens to Joe Rogan. How cool would that be? I could be on Joe Rogan. And then quickly back to, oh shit, what in the hell would I talk about? I have nothing. I don't feel skilled. I don't feel like I have any knowledge. The older I get, the more I realize I don't know. I'm wallowing in this madness of self-deprecating, insulting. I talk to myself so poorly, and I've buried myself so deeply. What would I talk about that I had any confidence in whatsoever? Because I have zero confidence right now. I have lost all faith in myself. And that is truly where the story begins. I've lost faith in myself. The storytelling in my head is incredible. There's not a lot big about me except for my mouth and my imagination. And in my head, the stories in my head were all over the map, detail-wise, and I would get creative. You'd have thought I was in charge of some major production because I would run through a scenario and stop it and edit it and re-say it and start it from the beginning and just over and over and over. And the story in my head had become so incredibly powerful. And I'm on the couch wondering, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I immediately think back to a time that I felt super confident. I've attempted to raise 2 sons and 2 men. And at the time, my sons one was barely a teenager, the other one was a preteen. And I had what I thought was a brilliant idea to take martial arts classes with my children. That would give me quality time with them. That would give them something that was, masculine and badass. And they didn't really worry too much about me tagging along because, it's martial arts and it was kind of cool, it was okay. So here we are taking these classes. I myself had zero, hopes, dreams, and goals for myself in regard to the classes, but come to find out I liked them. And my oldest son did too. And so we stuck with it for a while. And one day came the day when he and I were going to have to spar one another. We were going to have to fight. And leading up to this day, I had said to my son, dude, bring it. Bring it. Because I was feeling myself, y'all. I was confident. Yes, he stood 8 to 10 inches taller than me. Yes, he was 15 at the time, and I was definitely not. I mean, we'd been trained the same, right? But our skill set was not the same. He was far superior in balance and in strength and in flexibility and, all the things that mattered. But I was all about myself that day, and I was like, bring it, dude. We got this. Bring it. So we're in the class. I will be honest, I took mostly children's classes. I did attend adult classes some, but because the goal was for me quality time with my sons, I attended these children's classes. So we're in this class. We're in the middle of a mat. All around the mat are all these children and all their parents. So we're talking, 60, 70 people in this room, and the fight begins. And I give him this look like, it's cool, man. We got this. Do it. And we're bouncing around and, kind of giggling. It's a little awkward. It's a little weird. And I was like, whatever. I threw the first punch. He blocked it. He punched back. I didn't block it. I was like, oh, okay. I see. Well, I took that as a challenge, and it was on, and we were fighting. And I will say, I don't know what I look like from the outside, but in my head, I was looking pretty wicked. And we were doing our thing. And then all of a sudden, my son decides he's going to do what's called a roundhouse kick. It's basically you spin around using the momentum of your entire body, and you kick as you're spinning with this increased momentum, and you aim for the head. And I had never, ever seen my son execute this particular technique. I didn't really know he could do it. I never even thought about it, to be honest. It was not a remote possibility for the day. But then in that moment, not only it became a possibility, it became a reality. And my son executed a beautiful roundhouse kick. He brought it, and he clocked me so hard in the temple. My ears started ringing. It didn't knock me off my feet, but it might as well have. It's like those cartoons with the little birds that are, going in circles around the little character's head. And that character is like knocked out, jacked up. That's the space I was in. I was dizzy. I was sweaty. I felt almost sick to my stomach. And then all of a sudden I realized I couldn't see. I was blind. And I am screaming, I'm blind, when I felt what I now know were my son's hands on either side of my head as he spun my headgear back around into its proper position, where the hole for the face was actually in front of my face. Because prior to, I was looking at the jet black, dark inside of the back of my headgear. I went from sheer panic that I was blind to completely mortified, all within fractions of a second. And I'm looking at my son, and he's looking at me, and he is looking at me horrified. I don't know because he had just kicked me in the head, or if it was because I had just humiliated us both. But in that second, there was this incredibly powerful lesson. Well, there was 2 lessons. The first and most powerful was, Amy, your reality is often not remotely close to the truth. I'm going to repeat that for myself. Your reality is often not remotely close to the truth. That was lesson 1, big lesson for that day. And then secondly, for that day, what was flooding my brain while I'm curled up in the couch looking at my woolly boogers was, oh my God, there are days that I am more confident than I should be. maybe that means there are days I am less confident than I should be. Maybe I can start a podcast and talk about that I had lost all my confidence and all my faith in myself. And I had tons of guilt and shame based on poor decisions that I had made. And I proved to myself the evidence for this guilt and shame was the reviewing of all of these poor decisions that I have made. And the evidence for me being unworthy is reviewing how I could potentially have harmed all of these people in my past. And the evidence for why I really need to stay in this dark space is this story that I continue to tell myself over and over and over. And now it has gained power, lots and lots of power. So now I question, how in hell does a story gain so much power? I was raised in the Bible Belt. The Bible is a collection of stories. I'm assuming that the scriptures of all major religions are collections of stories, and people kill for those. Literally. How do stories gain power? Because the story I had told myself for a long, embarrassingly long period of time was that I am incapable. I am unworthy. I am no good. What if I'm wrong? What if I'm wrong? I was wrong the day that I thought I had gone blind. I was wrong. What if I'm wrong now? Let me start listening to the stories in my head. Truly listening. One way for me to do that is to record them. And here we are. Stories become powerful through, I think, a multitude of ways. I think one way, the most dominant way maybe for me right now, is the number of times I've heard the story. If I've heard the story over and over and over and over, it becomes more real, more true, more mine. Because y'all, I can adopt somebody else's story. You know, you hear something amazing, you're like, oh my God, that's amazing. And then I want to share the story because it's an, oh my God, amazing story. And I share the story. And, you know, sometimes I just adopt it as mine, you know, like the other day, blah, 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 this happened. No. Okay. Really? No, it didn't really happen. It certainly wasn't the other day. And actually, it was 3 weeks ago that somebody else told me the story. I admit it. I adopt other people's stories. I incorporate them into my own. Sometimes when I'm telling a story in my head of I am unworthy and I am no good, I can hear somebody else say something and I incorporate that into my story as more evidence that my story is true. Now, mind you, I have engulfed myself in this story, in this darkness for so long, and it is so dark that anybody that comes within my little circle now becomes part of this darkness. So they can say something completely benign, completely innocent, completely not even having to do with me. Oh my God, completely not about me. And in my darkness, I translate, I hear, this is about you, Amy, and they are validating, they are giving you evidence that the story in your head is true. See, they just said it. That's what they said. I do that. That makes my story powerful. Some of my story is based on things that I heard, growing up. How old was I when I first started getting some of the messages that I've gotten? And who gave them to me? Was it my mom? Was it the preacher? Was it some kid on the bus? All of these things add to our stories, and I am here to tell you my story today. My story today is absolutely affected by the stories of my past. I bring all the stories of the past, all the messages of the past, and they help shape my story of today. But it doesn't make my story today true, right? No, it does not. When you are thinking about the stories of your money and your marriage and your sex life and your parenting and your job, all of these stories are affected by all the things that you've heard up until now. But it doesn't mean the story in your head is true. I don't know. I know I want out of this darkness. I know I want to climb out. I want to rewrite my story. I have not buried myself. I have planted myself, which means I can grow. I can grow. I'm going to quit telling myself that I've been buried. In fact, I was buried in my own shit. But today, I'm realizing shit technically is fertilizer, right? Okay, so I am not going to see myself or report that I am buried anymore. I'm going to say I am planted and I have given myself ample fertilizer to grow out of this darkness. And the first step I'm going to take is to rewrite my story, which means I have to pay attention to the story itself. I like to consider myself a scientist. I pretend I'm a scientist. I love to ask questions. I love to be asked questions. I love to run experiments and make potions. So I'm going to experiment. I'm going to pay attention to the story in my head. I'm going to rewrite it. Just for today, I'm going to remember thinking I was blind and realizing I am not. And know, I am going to know today that just because it's the story doesn't mean it's the truth. Yeah. Now that's the story in my head. So my new story is that I think I've just recorded my first podcast. I find myself a little weepy. It's scary. It's exciting. It's the beginning of a new story. It's the beginning of a new story. And this story very well may include me being on the Joe Rogan show. Hell yes. I will leave that open as a possibility. And they say at the end of a podcast, you're supposed to ask your listener to click things or follow things or subscribe to I'm not exactly even sure what the hell I'm talking about. And that would all be lovely, I guess, if you did those things, because I think that somehow supports me, which I would, see very much as a blessing, and I'd feel super grateful. But to be really honest, the story right now in my head as I am rewriting it is I'd rather ask you to join me in my experiment and listen to the story in your head and be open to it not being true.